Greetings and welcome to this short video presentation on part 1 of Capture the Flag walkthrough for Stapler. This CTF is rated as beginner to intermediate, and this OVA file for the Stapler CTF is available from the Volun Hub download site. Though the OVA file is designed to work with either VMware or VirtualBox, I found that it works best with just VirtualBox. To ensure that you have network connectivity between your Kali machine and your target, I recommend setting the network adapters to bridge. For the sake of organization, I also recommend that you create a directory on your desktop and name it Stapler. I also recommend that you run all your commands inside of the directory Stapler and save all your downloads to the same location. As with every capture the flag or pen test, we begin by network enumeration. There's nothing wrong with discovering your network IP using the ifconfig command from your Kali machine. This makes the enumeration process all that much easier. We begin the enumeration process by using the net discovery utility --r with our network IP /24. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And in just a moment it will come up and it will show us all the discovered devices on this network. My target IP is going to be 192.168.0.29. Now this is my target IP, of course yours will differ. Now that we have discovered the IP address of our target, we now can enumerate the device for any open ports or services using Nmap. So you see that I've typed in Nmap space and I've typed in a bunch of switches. All this is available up inside of the lab. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and in just a moment my scan results will come back. Our scan results are complete, and we uncovered quite a few valuable and possibly vulnerable ports that might be open, including FTP, NetBIOS with some SMB shares, MySQL, and port 12380 running a Apache web server. We see that FTP running on port 21 is configured for anonymous logon. That's going to be our low-hanging fruit, so we're going to go after that first. So from my terminal, I've gone ahead and accessed my target using FTP, and I have logged on using the name anonymous and the password anonymous, and I have been successfully logged on. So we can go ahead and do an ls to list whatever might be available here at this level. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and we see we have one file called note. We're going to go ahead and copy note over to our Stapler directory and take a look at that later. So I've gone ahead and typed in the syntax get note. Now since we are working inside of the Stapler directory, everything that we save from our terminal will go directly to that Stapler directory. Again, that's one of the benefits of good organization. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and it says that the transfer was complete. At the FTP prompt, we can go ahead and type in exit. That brings us back to our Stapler prompt, and now we can do a cat to see the contents of that note. So I've typed in cat space note, and it says, Ellie, make sure you update the payload information. Leave it in your FTP account once you are done. Signed, John. So what we got here is a couple of usernames. Not much else can be useful, but we do have a couple of usernames. Our next enumerating attempt will be for the SSH. So I've typed in SSH, and I'm going to try to log on as root. So I've typed in root at my IP address, and we're going to go ahead and hit enter and see what happens here. And it says the authenticity of the host, my IP address, can't be established. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes or no? I'll type in yes, hit enter, and warning, permanently added the IP address to the list of known hosts. There we've got another message, and we have another user. Barry, don't forget to put a message here. And then I want my password, which I don't know what it is. So we're just going to go ahead and type in password, see what happens, and connection was closed. Okay, so not much going on here either, but we did get another username. So during our Nmap scan, we learned about some SMB shares, and now we're going to try to access those using the SMB client. So I've typed in SMB client space -L my IP address, and now I'm going to hit enter, and let's see what pops up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in root, and we get some shares. Interesting. Let's see what we got here. We have two active shares. One is Kathy and the other one is the temp directory. And we have a message, we have a comment that says, Fred, what are you doing here? Which leads me to believe that Fred has access to Kathy's share. So we can attempt to connect to Kathy's share using the user Fred. We'll see how that works. So again, I've typed in the SMB client syntax, space, whack whack, / Fred, which is the user, / Kathy, which is the share, and then I'm saying the dash capital I, and I want to connect over to 192.168.0.29 space dash capital N. Let's go ahead and hit enter and see what happens here. So I'm in, and let's take a look at what's inside here by doing an ls. So inside of Kathy's directory we have two more subdirectories. One is Kathy_stuff and the other one is the backup directory. Let's go ahead and enumerate Kathy's stuff by changing directory on over to that particular folder. So at that SMB prompt, I've typed in cd change directory space Kathy_stuff. Go ahead and hit enter. And we're now in there. So let's go ahead and do an ls and list the contents. Let's see what we have here. Kathy's_stuff directory shows that we have a text file called to-do-list. So we're going to go ahead and get that and copy it on over to our stapler directory, and then we're going to take a look at the contents. So at the SMB prompt, I've typed in get space the file we want to capture, which is the to-do-list.txt. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and it lets me know that that file was successfully copied over to our stapler directory. We need to do the same with the backup directory. So we're going to change directory on over to there. We'll type in cd backup. So I'm now inside of the backup directory up inside of Kathy's_stuff folder. And we see that we have two files that we can actually get a hold of and copy over to our stapler directory. So let's use the get command, and let's get both of these files and save them over to our stapler folder. Once I've copied those two files over to my stapler location, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, and this time I'm going to go into the temp folder. So I'm going to do an ls, and we see that we have a ls file that is listed inside of the temp folder. So we're going to go ahead and copy that on over. So I'm now ready to go ahead and copy over the ls file, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that file has been copied over to my stapler directory. We're done with the SMB share, so I can type in exit, hit enter. That brings me back to my prompt, put me back inside of the stapler folder. So now what I'm going to do is cat out a couple of those files and see what the contents are. We're going to begin with the to-do list. So I'm going to do a cat and get back over to the end, and I'll hit enter. And it says I'm making sure to back up anything important for Initech Kathy. We can go ahead and see what's inside of that ls file. So I've typed in cat space ls, and let's see what we got in here. But aside from the files and a couple of names, the information that remains proves to be rather useless. So let's move on. We're now ready to start taking a look at that Apache web server running up on port 12380. So let's go ahead and open up our browser, and let's take a look at what's going on over there. So I typed in the IP address of my target, and I've done a colon, and I've typed in the port that is running HTTP. Let's go ahead and see what's going on over here. I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter, and we bring up a web page. Alright, so we've got another user here by the name of Tim, but when we check out the page, there's not much else going on. And even if we look at the source, let's take a look at the source real quick. There might be something in here. But again, we don't have much information, and it's proving to be rather useless. So time to move on. Time to fire up Nikto. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my screen, and let's get ready to scan using Nikto for any misconfigurations that might be present. So at my terminal prompt, I've typed in Nikto space dash small letter h, my IP address, colon, and the port number that HTTP is running on. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and in just a moment we'll get some good scan results. A worthwhile scan, as we were rewarded with 4 directories. We have the PHP MyAdmin page. We also have the blog page. And we have the admin 112233 page. And we also have a robots.txt file. So any attempt at accessing the directory brings up the home page. And that's only until we figure out that we've got to use HTTPS to access these locations. So let's see if these pages have anything to offer, and we're going to begin by opening up our browser again. And we're going to start off with the robots.txt file. So you see I've typed in HTTPS : the IP address of my target, along with the port number that is running HTTPS or HTTP / the file that I want to access, or in this case the page. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and it says that your connection is not secure. That's fine. Click on the advanced button, scroll on down, add the exception, scroll on down a little bit more. Let's see if I can get over here to this thing. Here we go. And confirm the security exception. And there we are. Alright, so we're rewarded with a couple of different items up inside of this text file, and that is the admin 112233 and a blog. Let's see what this is about. The admin 112233 page looks promising, so we're going to go ahead and see what's happening on over there. And we're just going to go up here and get rid of this, delete that, and now we're going to copy and paste that new page we want to get access to. And we've almost been hooked. It looks like we get a warning that we need to make sure that we have Java disabled. Okay to that. Alright, thank you for that warning. So if someone had beef running a cross-site scripting exploit, and they had used this page, when we clicked OK or we got into this page, we would have been hooked, and everything we were doing would have been sent back over to that beef, and they would be able to follow along with what we're doing here. But that's not the case. It's just a warning. Alright, so let's go ahead and back this off a little bit. And now we're going to go to the blog site. Okay, let's take a look at that real quick. So this is going to be blog. Let's see what's going on over here. So over here on the blog page, we get a few more usernames, and there is a login here, and if we click that, you're going to find out that we have been presented with the administration page for the WordPress site. Interesting. So we're going to go ahead and run a WP scan and see what we can gather from this. So we're going to do this WordPress scan, hoping to enumerate some users, some plugins, or some other vulnerabilities that might be present. So I've gone typing this command. This command is available up inside of the lab. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And in just a moment, we'll start getting some scan results. Now, this might take a little while, so do be patient. I should point out that we're going to have to run 2 WordPress scans. One with the U switch, which is looking for users, and then we'll have to do another AP switch, which is looking for the plugins. So right now we're doing the one for the users, and as soon as it completes, we'll take a look at what we got from that, and then we'll move on with scanning for the vulnerable plugins. So our WordPress scan, looking for users, came up with a nice list of 10, and we're going to keep this in mind. We're going to come back to this, and we're going to take a look at one of the users who is probably going to be the administrator, because he's listed as number 1 there, and that would be John. Well, we also see that Ellie's in here, Barry's in here, and we got some other users that we know about, such as Kathy and Tim. So we're going to run the scan one more time, looking for those vulnerable plugins, and this time I'm going to remove the U, and I'm going to replace that with the AP switch. And we're going to go ahead and run this and see what comes up. And again, you got to be patient, and in just a moment we'll have our information that we need. See if we can exploit any of these vulnerable plugins that might be present. So as the WordPress scan starts to look for vulnerable plugins, it's first going to do a passive scan. If it doesn't find anything there, it's going to move on to the intense scan. And you can see this is what's going on down at the bottom of my terminal. Our scan has turned up 4 plugins, and we see that the one that we're going to be taking a look at for a possible exploitation is going to be the advanced-video-embed-videos-or-playlist. Now, if we do some research on this, we find out that it is vulnerable. So we're going to use another tool up inside of my Kali called Searchsploit to see if we can find an exploit that we can run against this WordPress site. And let's see what happens when we do this. So I've opened up a new browser. I've typed in Searchsploit, and I've typed in what I'm looking for, which is the advanced video exploit. Now, interestingly enough, this is going to turn out to be a Python script, and we're going to have to build it, which is not that difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to our storage folder, in this case stapler, and we're going to create a text file, and we're going to name that text file 39646.py. And let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm back over inside of my storage directory, Stabler, and now I'm going to go ahead and open up Nano, which is my text editor, and I'm going to create a file called 39646.py. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and that's going to give me a blank file to work with. Now we're going to open up a browser, and we're going to go get the syntax or the code that we need to place inside of this file that we just created. Here's the address for the code that we're going to need to copy and place inside of my new Nano text file, and it's up here on the GitHub. And this is the path, which is also available up inside of the lab. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. In just a moment, we're going to get this code. So what I want is the raw data. So I'm going to move this on over to the raw, and I'm going to put my mouse inside there, and I'm going to do a Control A, I'm going to do a Control C, copy this. I'm going to minimize my browser, come back on over here to my text editor, and I'm now going to right click, and I'm going to paste all this. So the part of this text or this Python code we have to change is for this URL right here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on over here, and we're going to put in the IP address of our WordPress server. I'm using Nano as my text editor, but you're free to use any text editor you want. I'm now going to do a Control X, and I'm now going to type in Y for yes, and the file has been saved over to my stapler location. So that's going to conclude part 1 for the stapler walkthrough. Now in part 2 we'll pick up right here where we left off, and I'll see you then.